Board games, it's what we're talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing, and over there is a lovely spark of joy and goodness. It is our Mark. Mark Cooke made a convention for the titillation and enjoyment of people to play some games. That is mainly Mark's call to fame. But Mark also does some other stuff, like making beer and helping make games. If that's not enough, we'll talk about Mark's life and where it all began. Although I'm not sure we'll get right to the very, very start. That's not the plan. Board games and Mark Cooke is what we're talking about. Board games and Mark Cooke. I'm not going to shout. Hello and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. I am Bez. This is Bezzy Beats and Board Game Bladder episode 291. And today we are meeting Mark Cooke. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
And
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. It's really lovely seeing you. And I think the last time I saw you was at your convention. Well, to be fair, I've seen you on your own stream. You've seen me on my stream because this is the way that we've been doing things in lockdown. There's a lot of video chats. But this is the first time that we've interacted, both of us, on video at the same time, I think. Ever.
I don't know. Didn't we do your podcast? Wasn't that after Airecon?
No, that was definitely before Airecon.
Was it?
That was definitely like well before Airecon. I mean, it was after Airecon 0, as you now call it.
Yeah.
But it was before Airecon 2020. Yeah, that's the year. And hello, Xate. It is lovely to see you. And hello, Elaine. Lovely to see you too.
Hi.
And so, yeah, these are, for those who don't know who Mark is, as I mentioned, best known for having created Airecon, and you had a brief dabble helping out the Fog of Love team. You're now working for PSC and kind of working for Zapato, and you're helping out with CoraQuest.
Yeah.
And if you had to summarize yourself in 30 seconds or a minute or two, what would you like to say?
Wow. Okay. So I guess I would say that I'm a social introvert. I don't know if that helps. So I like being around people, but then I need times of quiet and just sitting in a room. And for me, that's why I like games, because it can mean I can be around people and have good fun times. But then it's easy to go away if I'm having too much. So, yeah, I like learning lots of different things. I like trying out lots of different things. I really like learning about other cultures and traveling and things like that. That's probably me. I have a family. I don't know if that counts in that bit.
No, I mean, you've settled down. You've got 2 children now. Am I allowed to say their names publicly?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
And Lottie and I actually can't remember.
Lottie and Grayson.
Thank you. But yeah, I've only seen the one of them, which was at the formerly Airecon 3, now Airecon 2, I believe, which was the one after Essen 20 something.
Right, yeah, maybe. They didn't.
Lottie was at the one after Essen, I'm fairly sure.
Yes, Lottie was at the one 2 years ago, so she wasn't there last year, but she came to the one the year before. But Grayson's never been.
Oh, lovely words. So I like to start always doing the same thing, which is to ask you, what have you been up to recently? Recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights. Recent highlights, playing games and other delights. Recent highlights.
Yeah, so we had a really nice time the other day using our exercise allowance. I saw The Ben. We went to a play park and I had the kids and they played, and Ben and I walked around doing some exercise and just chatting and catching up. So that's the first time I've seen him in a long time, certainly in person. Obviously, Ben and I have chatted online, but that was nice to see him. And it was nice. It wasn't too businessy. It wasn't too Airecon-y. It was just catching up and seeing how he was, because he's getting married in September, which is very exciting. So had lots of things to talk about. Games, I've really not been playing loads. Certainly with my job, I have a lot of meetings through the day, so I'm on Zoom and these kinds of things a lot. So by the time it gets to the evening, I've just kind of like zoomed out a bit. So playing on Tabletop Simulator, I did loads of it right at the start of this whole thing. But as it's gone on, it's just kind of dropped way off. I did play Waggle Dance online the other day, which is a game I really enjoy.
That's a genius.
So it's fun. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, for me, that's definite. I know that a lot of people are big fans of Dice Hospital. That's clearer, the bigger game. But for me, Waggle Dance is Mike Nod's best.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I've been singing. I've got the physical copy as well. But I was showing it to some people that I was like, you should play this. That were saying they really like Dice Hospital. So I was trying to get them to play that.
Hello, Mike. Lovely to see you. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Yoda, for being here. It's lovely to have you join us. And feel free in the chat, if you want to shout out any of your own recent highlights, then feel free to shout out. Figuratively speaking, of course. Just type it into the thing. If you actually shout, then I'm probably not going to hear you.
Physical games, I played... what did I play recently? First Class. I played with Jenny, my partner. And then we did play another one recently, Fast Flowing Forest Fellas, which was good fun. Yeah, I think that's probably about it recently. I tried a few. I dabbled in a bit of solo gaming, but as I said before, it's for me a lot of it is the social thing. So solo gaming is like, it's nice. It's like a nice puzzle usually, but it's not. I don't get the same rewards from it because there's not the other people to interact with. So I played Yukon Airways and Santa Maria, things like that.
So yeah, I'm not super familiar with any of these games. Well, I know Fast Flowing Forest Fellers, the Friedman Freeze one, and hello Games Cupboard, and hello Nicholas. It's lovely to have you. We're just talking about recent highlights, but do you care to tell us a wee bit about this one?
Yeah, First Class. It's really, really clever. Actually, it's you're trying to build. You've got two trains that you're trying to build the trains, and you're trying to upgrade your carriages to basically rival the Orient Express. You're not trying to build the Orient Express, but each person is trying to rival it to make the best train. But it's really clever in that there's like obviously the core. It's all card play really, and there's the kind of the base deck of cards, but then you have about 6 or 7 different modules, and you add in 2 of them each time. And in any combination, you don't have to do like A and B. You don't have to do B and C. You can just do whatever you want. And it just each deck changes the rules slightly or adds in a new element to the game. But we both really enjoyed it, and we'll definitely play it again. It was really good.
Awesome. Nice. And yeah, we were actually just talking about Dan Hughes before we started recording. And so, hello, Dan. It's
Hi, Dan.
Good to see you. Omnipresent and around everywhere. Yeah. And yeah, for me, what recent highlights have I had? I have started off, I used to do a wee bit of walking around. I've turned that into a very quick run, which, to be fair, is only like 3 minutes, but it's like a proper sprint now that the snow has melted. So I go outside and I started my day that way, and yesterday, and then had a proper like walk, a longer thing in the afternoon. And it's like, okay, today I was able to run almost a full loop around the block, whereas yesterday I couldn't quite make it. So that feels a wee bit better, like kind of pushing myself a wee bit further. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yesterday I had chats with just everyone chatting about the game jam. It was lovely to chat with people, and then blethering with Kathleen Mercury, that was definitely a highlight. And then having a group call with a few folk in the evening. And it's nice to have that bit of social aspect for sure. And I'm not sure if this counts as a highlight, but yeah, I had a couple of glasses of wine last night, which is a very much a rarity for me.
Okay.
So talking about alcohol, and Dan, I'm going to allow you to pick a few things if you want, Mark. So you've got to choose. What are a few of your brilliant things? Brilliant things. What's a little thing which is brilliant?
I'm going to pick beer. I can pick specific beers if you want, but Belgian beer. I've got really back into Belgian beer recently, especially dark Trappist beers, which is beer brewed by monks, or at least the brewing process is overseen by monks. Another brilliant thing would be Timmy, which is a kids' TV show, but it's brilliant. It's like Shaun the Sheep, but it's like Shaun the Sheep's son, or certainly, or some younger relation in some way, and they go to a nursery, but it's really funny.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. It's a bit like, if you like Dougie, a lot of people went wild for Dougie.
Nice.
If you like that kind of thing, probably check out Timmy. But it's a bit older, and it's an Aardman Studios thing.
I mean, they make amazing stuff. Hello, Robert. Lovely to see you.
So that would be another brilliant thing. And then my other brilliant thing, I guess third brilliant thing, would be we have a nice coffee machine, which is like a espresso. We've had it for years and years, and one of our treats every morning, is like a nice coffee that we make ourselves rather than going to Costa Coffee or whatever your local chain coffee place is. But Jenny got me like a little holder for the grounds after you've used it, and it's got a proper little bar on it, so you like bash it out. Because before I was always like had to scrape it out with a teaspoon or whatever. I've been doing that for years, but she found this little thing that just stands on the side, and it's brilliant.
So it's having the correct tool for the correct thing. I guess that's
Exactly
what it comes down to.
Definitely.
And Dan is completely trolling, I imagine.
Yeah, he definitely is.
I mean, you never know when Dan's yanking your chain or not. But yeah, I think that beer is an interesting one, because we had a wee bit of a discussion, because you are with Airecon, the first time it was run because of your connection with the church, and you used to work for a church, a religious charity. And so religion is clearly a big part of your life. And how do you equate that with your love of beer and potentially getting married?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I try not to think about it too much. I would say that I certainly my faith, I probably wouldn't. I know it's a religion. I'm not going to pretend that it's not religion, but I would say for me, it's more of a faith than a religion. It's not a set of rules that I have to follow, and if I break these rules, it means I don't get to go to heaven. That's not kind of what I would believe, or certainly like a lot of people that I know would probably not believe that. They're probably getting a bit deep, but it's like the faith versus works kind of thing. And so for me, it's faith, it's not works. And a lot of those kind of rules are very Old Testament rules. It's not that they're not important. They're there for a reason. They're there to kind of stop us getting into too much trouble, I guess, or putting ourselves in danger. But there was a contextual element to those rules that are not as relevant today, in terms of the reason to not drink too much beer then was because you would probably be in a war the next day. And if you had a hangover, you might lose the war. And so that's less likely now, or, and I think
there's almost a cultural thing of having a few drinks on Friday nights or Saturday night, because the whole thing of, I mean, I'm not one of these people, but lots of people work for Mondays to Fridays. I've never had a job like that, working retail. They want you to work the weekends. That's when people are going to go into the supermarkets or restaurants or whatever, wherever I worked. And so they definitely wanted me to work on Saturdays and Sundays. But Friday nights, okay, get a wee bit drunk and then relax on Saturday daytime, Sunday daytime. Is that still talking about beer? How is that your kind of pattern, or
no? It's probably become my pattern more during kind of COVID times, just because. Again, much like I was talking about, board games is a very social thing for me. That's what beer is for me as well. I think it's a very social drink. Certainly, there was a big pushback in the last few years around the winification of beer, and having to be quite snobby about it all and picking out these flavors and tasting it in a certain way. And there's kind of a big pushback against that, because it's supposed to be a social drink, and it always has been. And so it just happens, like, the people that I would have usually gone out for a beer with, we're on WhatsApp, and we're kind of sending each other pictures of our pints and and things like that. We're having like a Zoom beer this weekend on Saturday. So I think I probably got more into a pattern because of that, but also because of kids. Just, I don't want to be with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. I don't want to be trying to do childcare while your head's a bit fuzzy. So I need to know that I'm going to be able to sleep it off a bit or whatever in the morning if I'm planning on doing that. I think you've muted yourself.
I'd like to get back in a wee minute to the line between religion and faith, because that's definitely an interesting distinction to draw. But yeah, let's just Oh, hello, great Alex. Game. That is blimey. That is a good gag.
I've got it somewhere. I'm trying to see it. I've got it on my shelf somewhere. It's a great game.
Oh, man. But yeah, let's go into the questionably quick questions, which I like to start off by asking, where exactly are you, in as much or as little detail as you're willing to give, and what time is it? I am in Glasgow. I'm in the third story of a building. I'm looking at some buildings in front of me. It's somewhere in Glasgow. There's blue sky. There's a lot of grey. There's a lot of white. Where are you? What time is it?
I probably the same time, 10:20 in the morning. I am on the top floor of my house, as you can probably see. The roof is here. I can't really see anything. I'm looking at a nice wallpaper. That's what I can see, because the window's here, and I have to close the blind so the light doesn't do funny things. I am in North Leeds, in a little suburb in North Leeds, where I live and have lived for the last 7 years, something like that, 6 or 7 years.
So yeah, let me ask, and anybody else, if you've got anything to ask Mark, then just get it in the chat. Now is the perfect time to ask. Okay, we've already got the first question. What is the strangest fruit you've ever eaten?
I would say it was something called a custard apple. And I think it was in Brazil, maybe. And that was quite weird. It was really, really, really tasty, but you could also see why they called it a custard apple. Like, it kind of had the texture of apple. It didn't look nothing like an apple. It looked more like an artichoke, maybe, something like that, where it had separate bits that you could pull off that were kind of quite slimy, like custard, in that kind of slimy custardy way. But it was really, really tasty. We got like I had been to like a Brazilian market where you could get all different fruit, and we just asked someone to put us together like a little bowl of local fruits, and there was lots of random stuff in there, like a cashew apple as well, which is, I don't know if you know, but a cashew actually is the seed of a fruit. It's not a nut, and it grows on top of this thing that looks like an apple that's horrible. The cashew itself is not very nice raw. You have to kind of roast it or treat it in some way. But there's a bunch of
I mean,
stuff.
isn't the same true of peanuts that you have to, and most legumes, you have to cook them. You wouldn't eat a bean raw.
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy because I know of custard apples and I've had one of them, but never knew. Sates asks, what's the sound of your favorite color?
I would say the sound of my favorite color is like the sound of like an idyllic beach. It's probably a beach you're never going to find, but it's like one you often see in dreams in movies or films. And it's when someone is like dreaming about, they often, I don't know why they have these often reflective scenes where they're stood, it's just them on a beach and they're barefoot, and there's a certain sound that always goes with that dream.
Yes.
And I think that's what my favorite color would sound like.
Yoda says, what is your favorite vegetable?
I'm a big fan of a sweet potato. Especially, I think you can do a lot with sweet potato. You know, you can roast it, you can fry it, you can chip it, you can mash it. Roasted sweet potato mash is great. You've got to be careful not to overcook it, though. I think that's the only thing.
I mean, I quite like the old fashions, like just plain white potato, because there's something nice about the lack of flavor, how it suddenly takes the flavor of whatever you spice it with. It's like a blank canvas, and it feels more versatile. If I was to have one every day, but I could spice it differently, I think it would be a normal potato.
But then I would, my argument there would be that it's not the potato that you like, it's the flavor that you're putting on the potato. Whereas sweet potato, I could quite easily eat without flavoring. I totally agree. Like, I love a good chip potato or, you know, mash or whatever, but it's the butter that you put in it or the salt and vinegar that you're putting on it that makes it nice. It's just a vehicle for flavor.
Yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from. Now, from Mike de Grief, we've got, what is the name of your favorite Belgian beer?
It's quite a hard question because I have many favorite Belgian beers. A lot of it will depend on my circumstances or who I'm with. I'm going to go with Chimay Grand Reserve. So Chimay is kind of one of the big Trappist beers. They make a Grand Reserve, which is dated every year. And you can actually say, they say you can sort of age it for about 7 years. Here's me arguing against the winification of beer earlier, but now I'm aging beers in my cellar. But what I've been doing is every year I've been buying 2 bottles of it, and it's a big 75 centiliter bottle or 750ml bottle. So I buy 2 every year, and when I've got 7 years worth, I'm going to have a load of friends around, and we're going to open them all in one night and see if we can actually tell the difference between the years.
Huh. Wow.
See how it ages.
I thought you were going to say that you are just going to have one each year, but like actually having them all at one time to see if you can tell the difference, that's a really interesting one. That sounds like an amazing.
So that'll be New Year, probably New Year next year. So this year, 2021 going into 2022, we'll do that. So that will I'll have 7 years worth then.
And apparently Mike de Grief's been there, and it's a nice little place.
It's great, yeah.
So I just want to give a shout out to tasting lots of things that taste kind of similar but different. That's one of my favorite things to do. And I'm not angling for an invite, although if I were to get one, that would be very nice. And I would totally go up to Leeds if it's safe and everything. But by the third suggests states you might not taste the difference.
Well, I guess the idea is there'll be a bunch of us. It's not just me tasting them all. So we'll have like a small amount of lots of beers.
You want to line up 7 shot glasses. That's what I imagine. So you don't even have a shot of each. You have like a tiny sip of one and then a sip of the other. And
yeah, exactly.
I would buy my own shot glasses.
Well, what I'm planning on doing, if I can swing it, is you can actually get tiny little. This might help. So this is like one of those little takeaway tubs. You can get tiny little Chimay glasses that are about that size. And so I thought if I could get enough of those for everybody coming, and then they can take the glasses away with them if they want.
And just to clarify, it's not wine, it's beer.
It's beer.
Yeah, it's just like beer that for some reason you're meant to age for 7 years.
Well, you can, whether you're meant to, I don't know. But the reason, so usually beer, when you brew it, you pitch it with yeast, and then all the fermentation happens, and then you kind of stop that process, and then beer is in a bottle when you drink it, and it tastes almost the same. It doesn't really age. with Belgian beers, they put a bit more yeast in the bottle, so it goes through a secondary fermentation. So that's why it ages and it changes the flavour, because it's still brewing really in the bottle.
Oh, that sounds like exciting times. What else have we got? Okay, so we've got Alex who asks, would you rather have a duck-sized meatball or a meatball-sized duck?
I think a meatball-sized duck would be very cool. Like running around. As long as it didn't eat as much food as a normal duck, I suppose. Like you could just feed it a tiny portion.
Would you feel, cool. Equipped enough to take care of this tiny duck?
Yeah, I think you could. I reckon it'd be small enough that you could keep it like in a dice tray size pen, probably, and then have a little pond that would be like, I guess, a cup would be a big enough pond for it.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, maybe a dice tray seems a wee bit small. Maybe go for like an aquarium type thing, and
yeah, I think it'd probably be as easy as looking after like a fish. And we had a fish before.
And how many pancakes are you planning on eating today?
I've had 4 already. We had pancakes for breakfast.
Does Dan have some special knowledge? Are you eating pancakes every time you talk to Dan? I don't know what's going on with this question.
Pancake day today.
Is it? I was unaware.
Shrove Tuesday.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I never knew that.
You'll know he has the sporadically bored Facebook group, and in there the idea today is that we're all posting pictures of our pancakes that we're eating.
I did not know that it was pancake day. Oh my gosh. Maybe I will try and make pancakes for lunch/breakfast in that case.
Yeah.
And
my usual preference is like American style fluffy pancakes, and we have that quite a lot for lunch. But today I made the good old, like the crepe style thin pancakes with lemon and sugar.
But final question, if anyone's got anything that they really need to ask, get it in the next couple of questions. Otherwise, you'll be able to keep commenting and stuff during this show. What are your favourite snacks to have with beer? Asks Elaine.
So I really like pork scratchings. Unfortunately, my friend so we used to play squash a lot, and then afterwards we go to the pub and have a couple of beers and have snacks. But he doesn't really like pork scratchings. He doesn't like how fatty they are. So we end up having things like chili peanuts and kettle chips and stuff like that. But pork scratchings is beautiful. But it has to be the proper pork scratchings, not like, I can't remember what they call them. Pork, like they're puffs. They're like puffed pork.
But did you hit your mic or something? Did something just happen? I don't know if it happened to someone else. Your voice went suddenly a bit wee duller.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, it's back to normal. I don't know if that was just me. Did anyone else hear a weird thing? But let me know if it's just me.
Okay.
Aquasilla says, as long as you're not having a crepe day, then it's all good. Robert is having sourdough crepes and then proper sweet pancakes after for pancake day.
All the pancakes.
What would your dream bathroom be like?
We've just had our bathroom redone, which is quite nice. But also a bit annoying because we got swindled by a cowboy builder. But it's done now, and it's a lovely bathroom. I think the most important of the part of the bathroom for me is a shower, and I really one day would love to have one of those kind of walk-in. It feels like you're walking into a car wash where you just get sprayed from all angles, and I love that.
Wow!
But that was on the shower we had put in. I got a big shower head, so it's like a rainforest shower or something it's called, and I love.
The downside with something like that is if you've got long hair and you're putting it all on the top of your head, it might splash into places you don't want. Whereas with a shower head, you can get it exactly where you want, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's got both things, thankfully, the one we've got. So it's got the big overhead shower, but then it's got the little handheld bit if you prefer that. So
nice. Alex asks, have you ever had a cheesy moment? I mean, I don't know how you're going to interpret this question, but
yeah, I've had lots of cheese. We've been eating lots of Gruyere recently with mustard, which is really nice. But in terms of a cheesy moment, in terms of a bit like maybe corny, I do remember at school when there was a girl that I liked, and we'd all been given sweets for some reason, maybe the last day of term or something. And I overheard her saying that she wished she had got Rolos, and I had got Rolos, but I'd eaten a lot of them already. So I said to her, "You can have my last one," which at the time was a big advert thing, giving someone your last Rolo. That was pretty cheesy.
Then did that go anywhere? Did you have a...
No. She looked at me weird and then walked off. Maybe she wasn't familiar with the adverts. I don't know.
I mean, maybe it was like, hey, come on. That's a bold move. We've only just met. What are you doing? Giving us... Oh, wait, so Alex says that a cheesy moment is the pub snack. It's extra strong cheese powder in a crisp shell.
Yeah, I do love cheesy moments. One of my friends really hates them because he says the temperature is wrong, like they're colder on the inside than they are on the outside, and for that reason he doesn't like them. But I love cheesy moments. It's really good. And bacon fries and scampi fries, all of those range of snacks.
Scampi fries, nice. And that was quite the story.
No.
So, Robert asks, are you giving up beer or board games for Lent?
No, we don't really do Lent. I've done it a couple of times, but it's more what I've tried to do is instead of giving something up, I've often tried to just achieve something in 40 days rather than giving something up. So
what did you do anything last year? I don't know when Lent is.
It's now, isn't it? Is it?
Okay. Does it start on Pancakes? Okay, Shrove Tuesday is the start of Lent.
Yeah, well, I think it starts tomorrow, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. It's a kind of a Church of England thing more than anything. So, and then it lasts for like 40 days, right? So it's representing the story of Jesus in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. And
did you do anything last year? Because I reckon at this time still the pandemic hadn't hit and, we were relatively ignorant of it. No, I don't think I did anything last year. My son would have only been 4 or 5 months old, so trying to think of doing anything in that sleep-deprived state was pretty tough. I think the last thing I probably did, I did a sponsored something a few years ago. Another year, I think I read a certain book of the Bible in 40 days or something. Or I read the New Testament in 40 days, I think. But yeah, it's not a big thing for us. That's totally fair. And final question, do you sing out loud in church? The church that I go to, they is loud singing, or people sing out loud. I don't particularly because I've not got a very good singing voice, so I always struggle to get the pitch right. I think sometimes if I can get it, it's all right, but other times I just can't get it right. Favorite hymn? Do you have one? Yeah, I guess so. So I guess you mean the more like traditional hymns. Again, probably the church that I go to wouldn't necessarily sing a lot of these traditional hymns, or they might sing more modern versions of them. But there's a song called "It Is Well," and I really like that. So, and it's the story behind it more than anything. It was a guy that had been through a really awful and tragic time where he lost a lot of his family on a boat journey, either from America to England or maybe the other way around. And then on the return journey, wrote this whole hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul," as he went over the spot where his family had been buried at sea, I guess. And it was all about finding peace in troublesome times. So that's probably my favorite hymn. And I guess Xate is familiar with that one. Yeah. You don't have to do this one if you don't want to, but Mike has a request for you. Would you please sing? Should I stick my finger in my ear and sing? Try it. Apparently, if you stick your finger in one ear, then it helps your pitch. I don't know if this is true. Do you have the control over muting me if it's really bad? You can just mute me and then unmute me
and say like, "Oh, that was lovely, thank you."
I could mute you if I wanted. Yes.
I don't know. Well, I don't even know. I sing so little, I wouldn't even know what to sing. I could sing a song.
Why not sing the songs that you were talking about?
Well, no. What I'll do is I'll sing a song that we sing to our kids at night, but I don't usually sing. Jenny usually does the singing. So I'm going to try this. I have to remember how it starts. I can't remember now. I can't remember how to start.
You can do this, Mark.
It's a bit about a little purple man.
Can we request?
A little purple hat and a cloak wears he. Silently he waits around, listening for the slightest sound. Then from out his strange little house he peeps. A little purple hat and a cloak wears he. As silently he waits 'neath the old oak tree. Then he pipes a little song to the don't you wish that you had been there to see? There you go.
Nice. I genuinely enjoyed that.
Oh, thanks.
And it seems like lots of people in the chat did as well.
That's very kind.
Robert says, if you cover both your ears, you hear your voice from inside rather than with the echo coming back from the walls. So you hear yourself how others hear you, perhaps.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if this is true. And hello, Matthew. It is lovely to see you. I don't think I'm going to subject Mark to that. But yeah. It says just belt out more confidently. It seems like that's all he. I don't know if it was actually finger in the ear.
Thing. I'll never know.
But yeah, I've got a few questionably quick questions of my own, and this is where it gets quite rapid fire. Okay.
Okay.
Last game you played?
Core Request, actually, I think, on Tabletop Simulator.
Okay. Last person you spoke to in real life?
My wife, Jenny.
Okay. Podcasts or books?
Podcasts, usually. Although I'm not listening to many at the minute, obviously.
What was the last time you listened to one? And what was it? Do you remember?
I think the last one I listened to was a 5 Games for Doomsday episode. And it was when I was driving. I do a lot of my podcast listening and even YouTube watching and all of that while I was on my commutes or driving around and stuff like that, which obviously isn't happening much. So,
Meatball or plastic figurine?
Meeple.
Okay, Meatball or cardboard standee?
I would still go with Meeple.
Okay.
But a cardboard standee over plastic figurine.
Mm. And that's the end of my own questionably quick question. So I would like you to, if you might, tell us what is a day like in the world of Mark Cooke.
Yeah.
I mean, with all the tiredness and the...
Yeah. Maybe I'll tell it from the perspective of my daughter. So, because our week, she always wants to know what tomorrow is, what kind of day tomorrow is. So our week is separated up. We're in a bubble with my mum who's doing childcare for us. So Mondays and Thursdays are nursery days. They're days that both Jenny and I work. So we kind of get up, get them ready for nursery, go and drop them off. We come, we do our work, we go pick them up. They have a snack, we put them to bed, we have our dinner. We usually have an evening together unless we've got some more work to do. Tuesdays is a nanny D day. So that's when my mum comes over. And you've met my mum.
Yeah, so, your mum's amazing.
Yeah, she's great. So she'll come over early in the morning. And it's similar to a nursery day where they just go off with her for the day. And Jenny and I both work. Wednesdays is a daddy day. So that's where it's daddy daycare all day. And I get to have fun with my kids all day, which is good. It's harder at the minute because everything's closed and it's so cold, or it has been really, really bitterly cold. So spending more than 15 minutes outside just gets tough because they get a lot colder quicker than we do. Fridays is a mummy day. So that's where similar to Wednesdays, but they have the day with Jenny instead of me, and I work all day. And then Saturdays and Sundays are family days where we all try and do stuff together. So we've definitely got into a pattern. I would say this last 6 months, every week has been pretty much that. There's not been much change, especially around here in Leeds. We've been in lockdown pretty much for all of this whole thing. We had that little bit off in the summer, but we were one of the first into one of those, whatever they're called, tier 3, whatever it was at the time, local lockdown, then became tier 3, then another national lockdown. And so we've really not had much time out of that at all.
It does sound lovely, kind of, and I sense that you are a very proud and happy parent.
Yeah, no, I love being a dad. It's definitely tough at times, but I think anything that is worthwhile is usually tough at some point or another. I've always, like, we made a decision very early on that I would always take Wednesday. Well, I would always have a day off in the week. So what I do is I compress my week. So I do 5 days in 4 days. So I do 4 longer days. But that means I get to have a day in the middle of the week with my kids, which I love. I think during this time it's been harder because I'm not as much into arts and crafts. So trying to find activities to do when it's really cold is just really hard.
Bye, Mike. And the other thing I wanted to ask is, when on those Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, when you are able to work, what does that typically involve? Is there a typical one of those 4 days, or is it all different?
It's pretty different, and it's kind of changed even during this last year. So this time last year, I was still working at Fog of Love. I finished that in April time. I had a couple of months off. I started working for a brewery, which is Zapato, and then a little bit after that, I started working for PSC Games, and then sort of that was quite interesting, trying to divvy up my week, because it was supposed to be 3 days for one and 2 days for the other, but of course I only worked 4 days, so trying to work out when in a day I should be working for one or the other. But I got furloughed from the brewery in December, so it's just been the games stuff, but that's been really cool. There's been lots going on, lots of meetings, and I was saying before that I've been chatting to people all over the world, which is a lot of fun, and just hearing different people's experiences.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big reason why I'm doing this, just getting to talk to people and see what everyone's up to. So, and let's go into the background, into the early years of Mark Cooke.
Sure.
And as we start talking really in depth about Mark, feel free to everyone in the comments to feel free to comment. I might not put everything up on screen, but I do appreciate and love it all. Feel free to ask questions. Obviously, it's been really respectful and lovely chat so far, so keep it up and follow if you want. So, yeah, Mark Cooke, what was your first ever memory?
Oh, my first ever memory, I think, was a sports day from a kindergarten.
Hi, Michael.
And yeah, I was on the tiger team. And I don't know whether that influences, but my favorite animal is a tiger. So, but I remember that sports day.
So you were like probably 3 years old or something like that, and you were on the tiger team. Did you feel a sense of competitiveness?
Well, I don't. There was definitely some competitiveness. I remember some stuff where we were kind of in 2 lines opposite each other, and we had like masks of our team. So I had like a little tiger mask, and we had to do something with our teammate that was across from us, but I can't remember what it was. It would have been in Germany, but I remember my kind of kindergarten. It was like an army building, because I lived on an army camp. Like a kind of one of those brown brick type buildings with a very black roof, and our classroom was in the top floor, and we had to go up and downstairs metal staircase to get in. I remember it was up there and having milk out of cartons and all of that kind of stuff.
And so you say that you were born into a military family in Germany. Yeah. So was that in an English speaking school? Was it in?
Yeah, very much so. It was all very very insular and all very English speaking. So I was born there. I lived there for 5 years in total, but up until I was 7, so I had 2 years where we lived in the UK and then moved back to Germany. But yeah, everyone on the army camp spoke English. Even there was like a little supermarket on the army camp as well, an Aldi that I remember. We tidied up some trolleys from them once and got some free like Kinder beer. So like
Kinder beer,
Kinder chocolate
yeah,
that make Kinder bars and Kinder eggs. So they make beer in Germany for children. That's like alcohol free, obviously.
yeah. I'm just that's not something that would they even be allowed to do that in the UK, because it kind of feels like it's training the kids to drink more.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But it was. I remember they gave us, like, me and my friends, for tidying up the trolleys, they gave us some Kinder beer. But I do remember I kind of bumped into a German lady on the streets, and she kind of spoke German to us, and we thought it was really weird. Like, didn't understand what she was saying. When I started at primary school, they started teaching us some German, but that was it.
And hello, Rob. Lovely to see you. What do you think it was? How many siblings do you have, actually? I don't know.
Just one. I just have, just a brother.
And would you say it was a really close, kind of tight-knit family?
Yeah, I'd certainly say when we were younger, because anyone familiar with kind of a military family lifestyle is we had to move every 2 years, and we got stationed in a different place. And you didn't always move with the same people. Like, if often my dad would get transferred into a different squadron or something, so we'd end up being with a bunch of new people, and so the only real constant were your family. So yeah, so my brother and I were very good friends when we were younger.
Are you still in touch?
Yeah. He lives sort of about 20 minutes away, so I mean, I don't see him. I haven't obviously seen him for a long time. But yeah, he lives sort of close to Bradford area, in the same place where my dad lives. So I get to see them both.
And that's where... Wait, is Bradford where Airecon started?
It was, yeah.
So, you moved over to UK, and then for you, did life change very much at all?
Yeah. So there was sort of 7 years where we were Germany and the UK, and then back to Germany, and then my family moved back to the UK, and they moved down south to Dorset. But I went to a boarding school for 2 years, and the boarding school was up this way, kind of near York. So that was a pretty big change, going from actually seeing, a very tight-knit family to I'd only see my family in the holidays, really, because it was such a long drive from Dorset up to York that even like a weekend was a tough journey. So, but I did that for 2 years, and then I moved back down south with them, another place in Dorset that was just another army camp, and then I think it was after that my dad came out of the army, and we moved back to where he was brought up, which was in Lincolnshire. Lived there for a while. My parents unfortunately got divorced when I was about 16, I think. 15, 16, so just as I was doing my GCSEs. And then I guess that was quite sad. Like, I went with my mum, and then my brother went with my dad. And so it kind of, we were living in separate houses. So, yeah.
I mean, that's a difficult thing to talk about, I guess. Obviously it's many years ago now, but is there still a lot of love between your mum and dad, would you say? And
no.
Okay, that's fair.
No, yeah, it wasn't a particularly amicable breakup, I guess. So then for a long time they couldn't be in the same room together. They kind of like would be okay now, but yeah, it's not like where you see some of these, I guess, some of these stories of them now being friends and they realize they should have never got married because they were just good friends or whatever. It was they're just quite different people now.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, sometimes it's just a bit of a mistake, and a breakup is just the best thing. I mean, it's unfortunate that that mistake happened, but let's talk a wee bit about family, going from the family that you were born with to the family that you gave birth to. And Jenny, if you don't mind me, so how did you meet Jenny? And
yeah, it's kind of funny because I guess it used to probably be a fairly typical story, but now you don't hear of it so much, is that we actually just met in a bar. And I was working behind the bar at the time, and Jenny had come to meet a friend. Jenny was actually late because she was washing her hair, which is kind of also funny. And by the time she got there, her friend was like, I've got to go. He was off meeting some other people, but she still had a full drink. So we just got chatting. And then it turns out we had kind of a mutual friend. It was just a regular in the bar that lived in the same block of flats as she did. And so I asked him, like, oh, would you mind asking if she would give me her number? And then we did all the typical kind of dating thing. And
the initial awkwardness followed by the greater familiarity, followed by the forming a lifetime bond that you're now pursuing.
Yeah, and that's how it went. So it was good.
It's lovely, and congratulations on finding someone to spend your life with. It's super awesome.
Yeah.
And Jenny, having met Jenny, my memory of Jenny is from, I think it was the first Airecon I went to. After that Essen, I don't think you did any more after Essen after this one. And it was I didn't realize at the time how tired I would be. It was the first ever Essen I went to. And then Monday, I thought, okay, that's my day off. But my day off was basically sitting in a car and kind of, traveling back. And traveling back is not the best day off if you then want to spend 2 days then making a brand new version of a game, like a giant in a bind, which then, it was definitely worth it in retrospect. But I did get a wee bit sick, and Jenny gave me lots of over-the-counter drugs to say, hey, if you're not feeling too well, here's some medicines and things that will relieve you of your symptoms. And so that was super lovely.
Yeah. No, she's great.
So let's move on to games, because, board games are a thing, aren't they? I hear, What was the first board game that you remember playing?
Oh, I think that's harder memory. I definitely have memories of, we used to go camping a lot. We used to have a motorhome, especially when we lived in Germany. So our school holidays would often be just us taking off on a trip in the motorhome. And I always remember playing board games in there. One of the most interesting trips, I remember we went into East Germany and Eastern Europe the year after the Berlin Wall came down. And so that was really interesting. But yeah, I remember playing Monopoly in there. We used to play a version of Monopoly that was like Speed Monopoly, where you just dealt out all the properties to start with. And it was just a game of like, how long can you survive, really?
You don't even do any of the auctions. You don't. It's like, you know what? This is a game of luck. Let's make it entirely luck. Let's take out that tiny smidgen of choice that you even gets in the. Who cares about its agency anyway? Let's just roll some dice.
Exactly. And so things like that, and Boggle.
I want to actually ask about this Speed Monopoly. Did you use houses or hotels on it, or was it just?
Yeah. Everything else was normal. It's just that you dealt everything out at the start, because I think we kind of figured that the first few rounds of the game is just everyone buying everything anyway. So, and
you dealt it out randomly.
Yeah. Just dealt it out randomly, but there was still some trading. We would do some like trading of like, I'll give you these two if you give me that one. And for some reason, my brother's favorite color was purple, so I kind of learned to game that and just be like, if I ever got a purple, I knew I would win, because I could almost get like 4 or 5 properties just for one purple, and the chances of landing on those purples is so small that so
wow,
it was maybe a bit mean as an older brother.
How much older?
Just 2 years. Yeah.
I don't know. 2 years isn't that much.
Yeah, but I guess there was still like a 7-year-old versus a 5-year-old or whatever. It's or like a 6 versus a 4-year-old. It's still, yeah. So all of those sort of normal family games, I remember playing, and my mum used to play with us quite often. And then as I kind of got a bit older, I used to go and visit my nan every week, and I'd often play just card games with her. Which was always fun. She'd like bring out this big jar of pennies that you used to use to gamble with, and sort of just divide up the pennies between whoever was playing, and you just put them all back in the pot at the end. It was just a way of seeing who won in that card game. And then at that same time, I got into things like Warhammer 40k and Necromunda, and I used to go to a club to play those, and played some RPGs and stuff at the same time.
So really getting into the Games Workshop and the typical British schoolboy type stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But I kind of fell out of all of that probably, I'd say, as I went to university. So maybe a bit earlier, maybe at kind of sixth form college or something. I think I sort of stopped playing a lot of that. I still had a big collection of, it was an Eldar army that was this huge Eldar army that I'd painted all up, and it was a lot of it was the old lead miniatures. And I had them in like a toolbox. Do you remember those toolboxes that you kind of open like that, and it had the different layers?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Lined with foam, and it was a really good way of like storing all these minis. And it had the big bit at the bottom that you could just put all the grunt type minis in the bottom, the plasticky ones. But then my dad chucked it all out because he just thought it was an old toolbox, and he just chucked the whole thing out. So I was like, oh, gutted. So that was pretty rough. So I kind of I stopped playing. I'd still play when I went home at Christmas. We'd still play games with my mum. But yeah, I wasn't like super deep into any kind of hobby gaming or anything. Probably till about 8 years ago, just around the time I was getting married.
So how big a gap was there?
Probably like 12, 13 years, I'd say. Yeah.
And so what drew you back in?
So we'd actually gone on a weekend away with our church at the time. And I think you spoke to probably Ian about this before, that there seems to be some weird connection with churches and board games for some reason. I don't know why, whether it's this wholesome hobby thing. And during that weekend,
as long as it's not demonic, as long as it's not D&D.
Yeah, maybe. Like our church would be okay with it.
I mean, sorry, I was kind of going more based off the big, American outcry in the 80s with the chick tracks, all that stuff.
Yeah. Although I think hasn't the Pope said it's okay now or something? Someone big in the church said it was okay. So yeah, that weekend, I think I was playing games like I'd still, up until that point in terms of board games, I'd still only played things like the classic family games like Monopoly, Cluedo, Jenga, Boggle, Pass the Pigs, stuff like that. So, but on that weekend, I got introduced to things like Apples to Apples, and I forgot what that one's called. But then we played Catan and Carcassonne, and things like that. And I really loved them. And I was like, wow, especially for Catan that didn't have a fixed board and it had these like trading bits and stuff like that, which I'd just never really seen in the game before.
Mm-hmm.
So I think so that was kind of in the summer. I think I bought a couple of games in between. I bought like Perudo and some other games. Then I think for that Christmas I got my own copy of Catan, and then it was only about 6 months after that I was going to my first UK Games Expo. A couple of months after that I went to my first Essen. So.
Wow, so you really dove in head first.
Yeah.
And then how long was it before you, started, not Airecon, but Airecon, of course.
Yeah. You could maybe still get to the Airecon website. I don't know. It was. I think I went to 2 UK Games Expo. It's probably about 2.5 years after that I did the first one that was in my house, I think, which was 2015. But the first proper one, I think, was the April after that. So April 2016 was the first public Airecon we did.
So what made you want to start up a convention? Like, I've heard that the first ever one was just a bunch of friends coming over, playing games.
Mm-hmm.
And why did you decide to... I mean, is it just, hey, I love this thing, I want to make a big deal of it, let's get everybody together for a weekend?
Yeah, so I'd already planned that one, I think, before I went to Games Expo that year. So Games Expo was usually end of May, start of June. And I planned that first one in my house for July. It was just that Jenny happened to be going away on a hen do, but going away for like a long weekend to Prague or somewhere, I think. And so I just thought, oh, I'll just do this HouseCon. That'll be funny. But try to treat it as a proper convention. So I had a name and it had a logo and we had a sponsor and we had an event schedule and various other things. But it was just a laugh and it was just a bunch of friends in my flat at the time. I think we probably had 20 to 30 of us over the weekend, but kind of dipping in and out at different points. But then I went to Games Expo and just had such a great time. And then I was like, well, what other things like this are there in the UK? And at the time, it was really hard to find. I think that there was probably things like MidCon and Manicon were still around, but they just didn't seem that similar. They seemed like maybe a little bit closed, or that they were a certain size and they liked that. And so I spoke to Ben. Had been at that same UK Games Expo, and I said, well, should we just try and do something ourselves? We've got the space, we've probably got the skills between us, because I was working in events organization at the time. So we just decided to go for it. And then I remember after that decision, I then went to Essen in the October and decided that actually we much preferred the UK Games Expo model. And it was when it was still back in the Hilton, and it was all the playing and the random encounters and all the fun stuff going on that we really enjoyed. So that's why we focused on that, rather than kind of... Essen was wild, and I certainly would recommend people at least experience it, but it was definitely not the kind of convention we wanted to do ourselves.
I mean, it definitely feels like you've worked hard to have this whole sense of community and togetherness that's been at the forefront of what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a conscious decision of it was the random encounters and the random experiences, and we always just kind of thought, well, how can we foster that without it getting too unwieldy and that kind of environment.
And then, yeah, you had to... I just realised Airecon 2 was the first one I was at, and there's no picture of me on your gallery. You need to sort that out.
There might be one on the Facebook galleries. We put more pictures on
there. Oh, I should put the In a Giant Spines video up just while we're talking. We could do a reaction video. But
good fun.
Yeah, it's... Since Airecon started, there's been quite a few, and then it's exploded. Like, you went up to Harrogate, and in this amazingly big convention center where you were in one room, and then you were in a bunch of rooms, and then each year you're expanding, and there's plenty of space, not to get to UK Games Expo level. And there they are exhibiting in your convention, because everyone in the UK is so friendly and everything. But yeah, what do you feel when you look back on what you've achieved?
I think it's great. Oh, there you are. Oh, that looks like you're doing some playtest with Jen. Do you know, I like that it still feels small. I realize it's not small, but it still feels like friendly, and like if I walk around, I know a bunch of people that are there, and I know a bunch of them that have been coming since the start, or I know them from Facebook groups or various other places, and I know them by name, and I can stop and have a chat. And I really like that. I would hate to lose that kind of feeling where it's just a mass of people in a convention center. So, and I think we've always said it's not really just about making this giant event that we make loads of money off. Wall of Cats.
Yeah.
And if we ever felt that we were losing that feeling, that we would just stop the growth, we would. But I think we've managed to retain that. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely always, with these things, there's an element of timing and luck. And I think we were just lucky that we kind of got in that gap where there was not much, but before a bunch of other things started. And it just happened to be that we were kind of one of the first of these smaller cons that have grown. You know, there's obviously been things like HandyCon and Tabletop Scotland, and there was Uncon down south. I don't know if they're still running or not. And so there was a bunch of these that have kind of followed that.
Twyman and Kent, yeah.
Yeah. That are sort of following that similar model. And we're always happy to help people with what we learned and how we did it. But we always caveat it that it won't necessarily work for everyone. we definitely were very lucky with some of the things that happened.
There you are, just poking your head behind a white balloon.
Yeah. The white balloon represents someone. I think it might be, I don't know if you know them, but the two white balloons, I think, are Jane and David Wilson.
Oh, yes. Yes, they're lovely people. They gave me a bottle of olive oil once.
Yeah. I often get a little bottle of olive oil from them. I got some jam last time I saw them, I think, as well. But I think they had to get their flight back. They're regular volunteers with us, and I think they'd had to get their flight back. They live abroad. And so
there's David.
There he is. There's David having a little sleep. So those balloons represented them.
It definitely feels like once you've got a solid community, it's about... I'm not going to say that you don't do any work to keep it growing, to keep it good, but yeah, there's so much of a family with everyone who comes, and yeah, I know that Stutch Yoda is still sad that he missed Airecon last year, and Elaine saying, Airecon is so lovely. I had such a good time last time, despite almost getting a parking ticket and having to hide from a traffic warden.
Yeah. I can imagine the traffic wardens in Harrogate are probably very busy because there's not a lot of parking for such a touristy town.
What steps do you take? What have you done to try and maintain that tiny atmosphere? And if Airecon were to be 5 times the size it is, how would you try and maintain the atmosphere that you have right now?
I think one of the things that's really good about the venue that we've got is that it's not just these huge giant halls with, super high ceilings, and particularly that main room we have, because it's kind of curved, got a lot of pillars. It's very hard to see everyone at once. So you kind of maybe aware more of the sound, and you can obviously hear people chatting and stuff like that. But it's not hard to kind of find a quiet space and find your own little. And we've always done things like adding in quiet areas or adding in sort of smaller spaces that people can go and game. So if they're not a fan of those big areas, and I think that helps. And I think even the events that we put on, like we've worked with you on quite a few, are more. They're not necessarily about how many people can you get in a room to hear some personality talking. There's often some kind of interactive element to them, or there's some kind of getting people together. Even things like the quiz is about like getting different people around a table so they can play as a team together, and just trying to foster connections between people that don't know each other, I guess. Oh
my gosh, and hello, Emma. It's lovely to see you join the show. And talking of amazing, lovely people who are just being part of a community, go check out Pointless Parrot podcast. But yeah, as you've grown, you've gotten more and more, let's call them personalities to come in, and it's been good times. I mean, obviously you've got someone like, John here, John Dodd, who and does so much stuff and is going to help you get to the next level. But is there a risk of Airecon itself sort of starting to be fractured at any point?
Not as far as we can tell so far. We're always very keen to get feedback. We always send out a big anonymous feedback form. We think that's important that it's anonymous, and as well as obviously getting the metric data in there of like, well, what, how much did you enjoy this thing, or what things did you find good? And it's like numerical answers usually. We also just leave a bunch of open text fields, and we do read through all of them. And I think it's always important for us to be aware of that. And if we ever found that actually some of that was happening, that's, like I said, we would either stop the growth or maybe even scale it back. But yeah, it doesn't seem like that's happened so far. I think we were a bit worried. We had a second open gaming room this last event. And we were a bit worried that might fracture it a bit, but actually it was great. Like, there was enough room for everyone. I think certainly with some of the bigger conventions, the open gaming thing is like a nice addition afterwards, and so it often ends up being there's less space for that. Whereas we've always gone the other way and said, well, no, the thing is we are open gaming, so we'll put that first in and then put stuff around that that's also fun. And so it means that people aren't scrabbling for table space. You're not like camping in one place all day. It's much easier to get up and have a wander around and stuff like that. So, but yeah, that upstairs room, we were like, it was because usually we would close at 11, has been something we've always done. But this year we decided, well, we'll get this extra room. We had that open till I think 1, maybe 2 in the morning. And that was super fun going up there after the downstairs halls closed. I think I got up there about maybe midnight. And it was just the buzz and everything in there. Like, it was packed still, but not overfull. People still having a really good time. And it was like, yeah, no, this is still good. Everyone is still having a good time. So. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I had to do a bit of typing. Thank you for... as an exhibitor, I like that it's like, okay, you stop doing this at a certain time, and then it's like, okay, you can now go around. There's still stuff going on, and it feels like it's small enough that it's still... You've got energy to go around. Mm-hmm. I've talked to a couple of people, I'm not going to name names, who've said, yeah, even though it's not the best from a financial perspective, it's just so much fun that... they're going to travel internationally to come in. And, it's like, let's be honest, obviously, if people were losing lots of money, then it would be like, yeah, let's not bother. But it's like people are doing this thing because they actually really enjoy games.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk more about Airecon in a wee bit, but you did... Oh, that's fair. Yeah. Elaine's not about the games at all. That's totally fair. Yeah, not the people, just the pork pies and peas stand. Yeah, all the other people, if they weren't there, that would be even better. Because then you could just have more of the pork pies and peas.
Yeah.
Like, actually, talking about the food, you do a really good job of having a good selection of foods. And do you think that the UK Games Expo has done a good job of being the stalwarts of kind of leading by example? Hey, this is how things should be, in a sense, because they've got Becky's Barges and places that, hey, yeah, you can go down and have a Subway if you want, but you could also go and eat something that's actually, this is really tasty stuff.
Yeah, no, I think they did a great job. And some of the food vans that you see at Games Expo come up to, so those guys, the Jabberwocky, they come up and they don't, I don't think they do their toasties, actually. They do hot dogs instead at Airecon. And I think it was always important for us again, that's a thing that probably came from Essen. Is they have some really nice food vans, but also if you just use the in-house catering, it's pretty rubbish and it's really expensive. We wanted to try and make it as much as possible that when people came, they didn't feel like they were then almost that theme park thing of then they're like, oh, you're almost paying double again just to have a drink or just to have some food and stuff. So, that's the Jabberwocky. That's their other van. So we always put in place that any of the food vans that come, they have to apply for a place. They don't just automatically get a place. They have to apply for it, and then we kind of wait. We put a deadline on it, and then we choose which ones we would like to have there. But part of the conditions of them being there is that they offer a meal deal that's a reasonable price, usually somewhere between £5 and £7. That includes, a meal and a drink and things like that. And other than but also, you don't have to do that. There's Harrogate is on your doorstep. There's loads of places you could go to if you wanted to. Oh, there's no pun included.
I hear that those people are pretty cool.
Yeah, they're great.
So
just making it accessible and affordable for people. Oh, yeah.
Jolly boats. I mean, I'm sure that all of these people are cool. I'm just actually personally friends with Tommy and Ed. They're lovely. Yeah. It's. What do you think is the essence of a con? Does a con need to be? I mean, it can't be all things to everyone. Like you've decided that you're going to prioritize the open gaming, and that is what's going to happen at this convention. But what for you is the heart of it? Is there something you can point to?
We've mentioned it a few times. I would definitely say it's the community, and I think what we try and do is listen to that community and give them what they're asking for, rather than going to a bunch of people and saying, this is what you get if you come here. We've kind of tried to, as much as possible, say, well, what do you like? What do you want? And that's even before we did the first public one. That's what Ben and I did. We went around to a bunch of games clubs. We went to and met a bunch of different people and just asked them what they wanted from we told them we were thinking of starting a little convention in Bradford, and what would they want to see if we did it? And most people were, at the time, were asking for gaming space. So I think the first public one we did, we didn't have any exhibitors at all. It was only the second one, Airecon 2, where we started having exhibitors. So.
Yeah, and it's been, as someone who's been there since, I guess, the first opportunity when you did have exhibitors, it's definitely being able to put on events and being able to, do fun things and, I guess, facilitate, because we're both about facilitating fun. I mean, you said that you were happy to talk about finances, so it's not the most exciting thing, but how does it run? Do you manage to pay yourself and Ben or anyone else for their time? Is it run on a volunteer basis? How does it all work? How do you make sure that it's going to continue?
So after those first couple of events that we did in Bradford, we were very fortunate. Like I said, we partnered with a church that, we kind of knew the people that ran that church, and they gave us the building there for very, very cheap, which allowed us to do that. And a lot of people sort of say, if you're going to get into events, you should expect for your first 5 or 10 years to make a loss every year. And we've just never made a loss. We were like, well, no, we can't afford to do that. We don't have loads of personal money to be throwing away. So, and one reason why I approached Ben to do this together was that he is he's works in finance, in accounting, and he's becoming a qualified accountant right now. So he has much more of that kind of balancing the books kinds of skills, and is able to see, well, this is the projection we're on. So yes, we probably could afford this, or we probably can't afford that for now. A good example is the big Airecon lights that have now kind of become a bit of a staple. I saw them and I was like, I want these, Ben. I want these. Please, can we have them? And he was very good at saying no until he was confident that we could afford them, because they obviously cost quite a lot of money to hire, things like that. But after those first 2 Aircons, we realized that we needed to either really put a limit on how many tickets we sold. I think it was 250-ish people at that second one, but we were literally using every space in that building. We had people in meeting rooms, we had people in like the creche of the church downstairs playing Two Rooms of the Boom. We were having to scrabble around, find tables and put more tables out and things like that during the convention. So we realized we needed to move, and we actually realized we needed to move before that convention, just with how well it had gone, the first one. So we approached Travelling Man, who's a friendly local game store. They're based here in Leeds, but I think they've got four stores around the north of England. And we spoke to them about our plans, and so we ended up setting up Airecon as a limited company with 4 directors, obviously Ben and I, and then Nabil from Travelling Man, and then Rick, who was working at Travelling Man. He's moved on now. But we're the 4 directors. And part of that agreement was that Travelling Man agreed to put up some money for us to facilitate that move to Harrogate. But Ben and I did all the work in terms of researching venues and going around. We had a short list of something like 100 venues. At one point, I think we ended up visiting about certainly in double digits of different venues going around all over Yorkshire. We weren't just looking at Bradford. We looked at like Bradford, Leeds, Harrogate. Obviously, we were looking down in Wakefield, places like that. But yeah, so they were able to facilitate that first move, and kind of that's part of the arrangement now. Is if we ever need money, Travelling Man would put that in, but they're always the first ones to get paid back. So we have never lost money on an event. We don't pay ourselves. We haven't ever taken any dividends out of Airecon. Any money that we make just goes back in to just kind of build up a bit of what we'd like to do is to be able to know that we could afford the next event even if no one turned up. And so
it sounds like Travelling Man are putting into money on an almost zero interest loan basis, or are they? Yeah,
it's kind of that kind of basis. But we're at the point now. Certainly this last year, we didn't actually really need to borrow anything from Travelling Man, so it's worked quite well. As I said, Ben is very good at reining me in, and when I have these kind of plans to move to huge halls, or not that I've done that, but he's always very good at being like, well, let's wait to this point and then we can make that decision and things like that. So I think it's massively helped. Obviously, having him, if it was probably me just by myself, I probably wouldn't still be doing it because I get too excited.
Because you're too much of a dreamer and you're not very good at managing and balancing numbers.
Exactly.
So Robert asks, would you consider going back to twice a year? I mean,
we've spoken about it. I think one thing we were looking at was if we did do it, we might look at a different venue. So have two, a bit like BGG Con. They have BGG Con and then they have BGG Spring. We thought about doing something like that. What we're very careful of is to not. Sorry, I was just having a nice treat being dropped off. I've got a donut.
Ooh, nice.
A little mini donut. Is to not go too quickly with that kind of stuff. So, I've lost my train of thought there. So twice a year was too much. It's almost you finish one, and you have to be. Even at once a year where we're at with the size we're at now, we kind of run it in March. By June, we're already starting to book exhibitors for the following March. So if you're doing that every 6 months, that's like you've got to always be thinking 2 events ahead, which just, we all have full-time jobs. Like I said, we're doing this mostly in our spare time. At the minute it'd be too much, but we did think about it and we thought if we felt like we could do it, we would probably look at another venue somewhere else in a different part of the UK for a second one, but we haven't ever firmed anything up on that.
I mean, it feels like that might be a potential way to keep the smallness if it got too big, but then again, you risk the sense that, well, if you're just fracturing the audience, then if I come to one of them, then if I really want if there's someone who wants to see me or I like to see them, then we might end up going to 2 different ones. And so everyone will just end up wanting to go to all of them anyway. So they probably wouldn't be that much smaller.
Yeah, potentially. I think we'd probably follow a similar model where we would just start very small with it. And so we would initially have one very big event and one quite small event. And I think we'd only do it if it was right. Like, I think there's still a couple of gaps in the country. They're still surprised there's nothing really in the northwest, kind of Manchester, Liverpool, Blackpool area. I still think probably the southwest. They've got GridCon now, but for a while there was nothing really. They had City of Games for a couple of years, but then that went away. So something kind of in that area. But yeah, we've not really. We were kind of starting to have those conversations last year, and then obviously all this kicked off, and then we put it to one side for now and just concentrate on making sure we can run this one well.
So yeah, and Robert says that they didn't realize that you were not paying yourselves for what must be a huge amount of work.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a sense that at a certain scale, in order for something to be sustainable, you do have to get to a place where you are making some sorts of income from it, because otherwise, look, I don't know what will happen after Richard and Tony, because there's going to come a point where maybe you four, you, Ben, Richard, Tony, and not to mention Doug, everyone responsible for conventions. There might be a point where you just don't have the energy to do it anymore. Yeah. You don't want to do it anymore, or God forbid, someone might pass away, or some life emergency might happen. In which case, you need to be able to have some way of getting someone else to step in somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, like I said, the thinking around events is usually it takes about 5 years for you to start making any money at all. For those first 5 years, you should expect to make a loss. So I know for Richard and Tony, I don't think they paid themselves for something like 9 years. And then it got to that point where Tony was like, I'm just doing too much of this. I can't not pay myself. And so gave up his job. And that's where they suddenly saw a massive growth, was because they suddenly also had a massive investment of time, and they kind of really, really stepped it up. I think the interesting thing with events is the bigger it gets and the more income you have coming in, the cheaper it gets to run per person. So your costs go down as your income goes up per person. And I think there's just this tipping point of suddenly...
Wait, the income per person goes up? Don't you mean the income per person is static, surely?
No, well, usually ticket prices every year go up. What people are willing to spend goes up every year. What you can charge exhibitors goes up every year. Things like that.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, and there's usually extra stuff you can do, which might get you a bit more income. There's usually more grants you can apply for and business loans and things like that. So actually, so certainly your profit per person increases exponentially as the costs are going down and what you're charging is going up. So.
I mean, I would be interested to actually have Richard back on. Richard's come on to this show twice, I think. Yeah, twice. And I thought, so this is maybe looking too far ahead into the future, and this is into the days of beyond the pandemic and everything. And actually, let me address that just a wee bit. I don't want to belabor the point. I'm assuming if I ask you, how did it feel to not run it? I'm assuming you're going to say disappointing, but that's life.
Yeah. No, I'm gutted. I think we definitely had some hope last year. Probably September, October time, we had some hope that we might be able to run it. And then I think it was these variants started popping up, and other things were happening that just meant we definitely couldn't run it. If we could have done it safely, we would have done, but we just couldn't imagine any way that we could, which is why we cancelled it. And yeah, I definitely had a few low days after having made that decision, which was only last week, I think last Monday. that we finally made that decision. I think I'd realised it was probably going to happen for a couple of weeks before, but actually even just making that decision, I was pretty low for a few days, and just like, because I love conventions in general, and I think most people that are running conventions would be of the same, are the same, that they're doing it because they love conventions and they love seeing people, and they're quite social people themselves. So having it now being like, well, we know we're definitely not likely to be able to get together with big groups of people and game until after April. For me, I think my first opportunity might be July, which is Nuremberg, but I would imagine that's probably going to get cancelled. So that makes it then.
I mean, I'd be at Nuremberg if it happens, because that's where I felt like my career was beginning to start at the start of last year. And yeah, made a few contacts there, got a couple of games taken, and then Cannes, and then...
Yeah, so... Yeah, I was gutted. I think it was more than disappointed. I really wanted to do it, and I am not a huge fan of online conventions. I know they're very important for some people, but for me, they're just as much effort that goes into them, and people do a really, really great job of running them. None of them can ever replicate the one thing that I really love about conventions. There's many things I love about conventions, but the main reason I go for conventions is that social aspect and bumping into people, and I haven't seen that replicated in a useful way yet. So
yeah, it's, I mean, disappointing is putting it mildly, but I don't think there's any points in belaboring the point, because if you are someone who loves conventions as well, you're feeling exactly the same way. And of course, this is your baby. You've got that extra thing, but I'm feeling, very much like, you saw my bubble machine at Airecon, and like how I've got to whimsy budgets. I mean, for goodness sake, like I'm often the first person out of all the exhibitors. I'm the first person into Airecon and the last person in, because it was taking me so bloody long to set up these cats, until it was like, okay, that's enough. No more cats. I don't want to spend like 10 hours putting up cat pictures. But I mean, just the joy of people coming round, having that whole elbow bump thing that we walked around, playing, Jetpack Joyride by Lucky Duck, done by Jason Freud. I mean, Jason Freud wasn't the designer. Jason Freud was just demoing it to me.
Yeah.
But then having chats with people, seeing Elaine and Mandy, and like seeing those people, like having people come internationally. There's seeing the person opposite me, seeing Dave Weatherall and Rob, and people selling these amazing chocolate bars opposite me, someone giving me some free scissors because saying, hey, you know what? I go through lots of scissors. These fabric scissors aren't good enough for fabric anymore, but you can use them because you're clearly cutting a lot of paper. So here, this is my wee present to you. And seeing Mark Stockton Pitt with the, seeing the, it's like just such a vibrant thing. And everyone, I'm not here to blow smoke up your posterior, but it's... and I'm not going to say Airecon's my favourite convention. I'm not saying it isn't. I don't know. It would be really difficult for me to pick a but it's definitely up there. It's definitely, when I look at, okay, in 2019, what were my favourites? Yeah. I loved Cannes, I loved Bastion, I loved Airecon, I loved UK Games Expo, I loved Essen. I loved all of these for very different reasons. I would say Essen was probably my least favourite out of those 5 that I just mentioned from a personal enjoyment point of view. Although there's definitely something fulfilling as a publisher going there and selling, a couple of 100 copies. And Elaine loves conventions, both professionally and personally, but it's more important to stay safe at the moment. There will be a day, again, when we can all go to them. And yes, that is it. I know that you shared a viewpoint with Richard and Tony, who both said, I love Tony Hyams, who's very frank and candid with everything that Tony says. And Tony says, look, ultimately, if we get this wrong, people are going to die, and it's not worth doing that. because games are important, but it's not good as. And Robert, whilst it's sad we can't do events right now, it's good as it's reminding me that these things will be back one day, 100%. These will be back.
Yeah.
And yeah, we don't want the next convention to be our last. We don't want to go there. And
yeah, definitely not.
We are, I mean, I've spoken to, I mean, Richard's publicly stated on Big Cooke, talking about, how they have been thinking about what if there is no UK Games Expo in 2022. And for you, it's a very different beast because, like, would Airecon survive if there's no Airecon 2022?
Yeah. Again, we're quite fortunate. Like I said, we're not financially dependent on Airecon in any way. We don't take any income from it. We don't draw a salary, anything like that. And so not running it for us is it doesn't have a huge impact on us other than we're just not running it. And the sadness that goes with that, it's not a thing that is going to leave us destitute. Airecon doesn't have loads of loans as a company or anything, so we haven't got stuff that we've got to pay back and therefore need income to be able to do it. So yeah, we're fortunate in some ways that we're not in that position. If we don't run Airecon 2022, it's fine. We can run Airecon 2023 with no issues. It's
yeah. Let's move on to talk about about your career. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, from a very gosh point of view, things that you do to make money. And so before, what was your first job? Actually, going back.
Way back, my first ever job was as a farmhand. And I used to get paid £1 an hour. And then I remember I worked something like 60 hours in a week. So I got £60 and I went and spent it all on Games Workshop stuff.
That sounds almost criminal. £1 an hour.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. But I was doing some pretty crazy stuff. I guess I was maybe 13, 14, I suppose.
Okay.
But I was driving forklift trucks. I was sorting potatoes on something called a rattler. We lived in like a tiny little village, so that was the only real work. We didn't have a shop or a pub or anything like that. There was one newspaper around, but somebody had already claimed that. So the only job
there's only one newspaper delivery person in this town.
Exactly. So, but I knew them, and I used to go around with them and help them sometimes. So yeah, that was my very first job, was working on a farm.
And yeah, how did you get to working for this charity that you were working at when?
Yeah, so I went to university. I studied in visual communications, specializing in graphic design. But then when I came at the same time I was at when I first went to university, I was in a band at the time that was doing quite well, and I also had a job. I was working at Subway, I think, or Free Spirit or something like that, a clothes shop which isn't around anymore, and I just found like I couldn't put my best into any of those things because, I didn't really care about working at Subway. It was just a job, but I still had to go and do it. And I think that was at the start of my second year of uni. And I went to my tutor and I was like, look, I don't really know what to do. Like, I'm always shattered because we were touring constantly with a band. We did something like 300 gigs in 2 years, or something like that, or 600 in 3 years. It was something silly. And then I was having to try and fit all my uni work in as well as working. And he was very wise and said, look, the course is going to be around forever. Well, probably not forever, but the course will be here long term. This band thing is a one-time opportunity potentially. So go and do that. If it doesn't work out, you're welcome to come back and rejoin the course at the point where you finished. So that was very good. The band was actually called Fulk, which is FULC. It stood for something. It was a Quake clan from the days of playing Quake online that I wasn't part of. And then they started this band, and then I joined shortly afterwards as the drummer. I think there's a video on YouTube you can go and watch. And so I then went and did the band for a couple of years. Went back to university, finished it off. At that time, I'd started working in like clubs and bars and stuff. And I finished university, obviously a bit older than someone would normally finish university. I went traveling for a year. I came back and just got my job back in the bar, which was a craft beer bar, obviously. And I did that for a few years, and then I was like, right, I'm ready to kind of start a career now. And the only thing I had was my degree. So I wanted to get into graphic design. But I always had this desire to work for charity, for a charity. But not many charities actually have in-house graphic design departments. But I found out about this one in Bradford that was also a Christian charity. So I didn't actually they were advertising, I think, for a web designer rather than a graphic designer. And I remember in my interviews being like, I'm not a web designer, I'm a graphic designer. And then after the interview, they were like, I'm sorry, we can't offer you the job because you're clearly a graphic designer and not a web designer. And I was like, well, that's what I told you. It was a bit confusing. But I was massively inspired by what they were doing. It's a debt counselling charity. So it's not just for Christian people, it's for anybody. They'll help anybody anywhere in the UK, well, almost anywhere in the UK, where they have centres. And the idea is to help people get out of unmanageable debt. And so that's either by putting payment plans in place and negotiating with people, or helping them go through an insolvency process. But they did loads of good work. My first job with them was in events organisation. So when I was at the bars, I had run a lot of events. That was part of the thing that I did. Like I turned the bar into a circus one day with stilt walkers and fire breathers and all of that kind of stuff. And so I got this job in events coordination with the charity, thinking that I could move across to graphic design. But I actually massively enjoyed that, and then just sort of worked my way up through the charity really to become a department head. But then, yeah, I felt like it was time to move on. This opportunity came up with the Fog of Love team and applied for that. It was a strange experience. So that would be coming up to 2 years ago. I flew over to Denmark for a day, which was just messed with my head, just for an interview. So I flew over there, met the team, had an interview. As I was sat on the plane to come back, they called me and said like that they'd really like to offer me the job, which was in project management.
Nice.
And production management at the time, because my job at the charity had gone into project management, and I'd got a couple of qualifications and stuff in that. So I started doing that. I had a very odd first day on the job. Was at UK Games Expo. So the 1st of June the year before last, was going to be my first day. Unfortunately, the owner of the company, Jacob, had some really kind of sad personal news that he got given at UK Games Expo. And so literally, I think it was 2 minutes past midnight on my official first day, which was also a Saturday, weirdly. I got a phone call asking me to go to a hotel where the rest of the team were staying. Jacob wasn't there, so it was all a bit odd. And they basically asked if I would, they told me that Jacob needed to take some time out, and would I step into the CEO role. So that was on my first day of my new job. I took over as CEO of Hush Hush Projects, Fog of Love.
Wow.
Unfortunately, Jacob's personal circumstances haven't really resolved themselves. It's still going on. Part of that was that he needed to wind down the company. So we were all made redundant back in April last year. And so I had a couple of months with nothing. And then I got some work with a brewery through someone that I know, doing business development with them, and probably some project management stuff as well. And so I built their website for them and did various other bits. And then I heard about this opportunity with PSC Games. And it was kind of funny. It was right in that window where we were allowed to go out a little bit. And we actually went on holiday to a caravan park in August last year. And I had my interview at that caravan park over Zoom. So I was in like shorts and t-shirt with like blazing hot sunshine at the time, having this interview with them. And so, yeah, I've gone back into doing project and production management with them. So and it's
I
really
mean,
cool.
I find it's a wee bit of a dichotomy how we are apparently not responsible enough to handle the money and the technical aspects and counting of Airecon, but yet you are doing all this logistics and production and stuff for other companies.
Yeah, I think probably what is with something like Airecon is that I'm a bit more happy to take risk because I'm just like, yeah, let's just do it, because it's more, the responsibilities are more on my shoulders. But if I'm working for somewhere, yeah, I'm very good with a spreadsheet, very very good at timetabling and being organized and stuff like that. So I'm just maybe a bit more liberal with the actual money. But if someone gives me a budget, I'll stick to it. It's fine.
So it's that you need, as long as you've got someone putting some sort of leash on you, that's what you need.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be a person. But if there's some kind of restraint, I'll work within those restraints, or tell someone that it's not feasible.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you've ended up in this situation where, also, let's talk a wee bit about Cora Quest. Actually, no, let's talk a wee bit more about PSC. What exactly do you do? I want to nail down into that.
Yeah, so when a designer comes up with a game, and if PSC decides to sign that game up, it'll be my responsibility to take that game from some kind of prototype or whatever, is to work with the designer to figure out the components that we need for that game, to commission artwork and to commission graphic designers, and things like that. I don't do so much on the marketing side of things. That's someone else that does all of that. But it will basically be to take it from a prototype into some kind of product that we make and can get to people's hands in some way. So it's just overseeing that whole process. So obviously doing a lot of negotiating with factories and manufacturers, and just trying to put in timetables of when we need, and deadlines for people to say, like, we need this by then, otherwise we're not going to hit this release date or whatever. So,
and just because Alex has expressed an interest in going over and seeing their setup, because they're only a couple of villages away, do you know if that's something that might be viable in times of after isolation, of course?
I'm sure it would be. I've never actually been there myself yet. Like, I've never even met... Oh, I met some of the team in person because they were at Airecon. But a lot of my colleagues I've never met in person. I've never seen our warehouse. I've never been to our office. Like, all of my interview and everything was done via online. So, and my whole job, all my meetings and stuff are online. So, but they're pretty friendly. I'm sure they wouldn't mind someone popping by. I think it's just a warehouse. I don't think there's anything that exciting there. It's the warehouse full of games.
Yeah, quite so often it's like, yeah, really, these places all look very similar.
Yeah, definitely.
And it doesn't quite have the magic Willy Wonka vibe that you might be
definitely not
looking for. But so, yeah, let's say you're on top of things enough to do a wee bit of take on some responsibilities. And that brings us to Cora Quest.
Yeah.
So how's this going? Is this a paid position where Dan's employing you to help out with it, or?
No, it's more of a partnership. So I don't... there is gigantic vats of bubbling plastic because we have our own miniature production line. So I don't know if they're gigantic vats, but there must be some bubbling plastic somewhere to be able to make those minis. Dan, when he was first thinking of turning this into a proper Kickstarter, just sort of approached me and said, look, would you be willing to help out with all of that side of things, all the logistics and the production and all of that? And it's kind of funny now when I look back at it, and I was kind of like, yeah, sure, that sounds fun. I'm happy to do that. Not realizing how big it would end up being. So there's myself, Dan, and Gary, and obviously Cora as well, as the CEO. And the three of us are the main ones working on it. But with Dan's connections, there's a bunch of other people that we've we've paid to do various things, or will pay once we get the Kickstarter money to do various things to help us out. But anything that's left over after we've paid everything out, unfortunately, we don't get that sum of money that you see on the Kickstarter page by the time we pay Kickstarter fees and VAT and production and everything,
and fulfillment and
yeah,
yeah,
it's significantly less than that, but it's still, it's still an amount of money that we'll basically just divide up between us proportionately.
Cool. And how's it been being parts of it? But can I actually ask, when did you become parts of this partnership? I saw you posting about it on Board Game Trading and Chat back when Hero Quest was first being announced.
Yeah.
What was it already a partnership at that time?
Yeah, I think so. It's quite hard to remember now because it wasn't for quite a while. I was just giving advice and it wasn't really solidified. It was just like Dan, I guess, was trying to test whether it would be possible, and so he was asking me questions about kind of, well, what would we need to charge if we did this as a game, and who would you recommend as manufacturers or various things like this. Because I think at the time he was exploring whether he wanted to take it to Kickstarter or whether he wanted to pitch it to publishers. In the end, he decided that Kickstarter was a better fit, more for having a bit more creative control over it and a bit more, a bit more say in the design and how it goes. So yeah, I'd have to look back at my messages. I can't remember exactly when we agreed to do it or not. I think we had a meeting with myself and Gary and Dan where we all kind of went, yeah, let's do it. Let's have a go. Yeah, like I said, just not realizing it would blow up as much as it has done.
Yeah, like looking at the Kickstarter, it seems to be 4,138 backers with 3 days to go. So that's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's more. I know that not everyone's necessarily backed for the game, but that's more than a lot of games ever sell.
Yeah. So we're really, really excited about that. I think our initial goal, like we worked out, well, if we got 400 people, we have enough to make the game without losing money. And that's where we really thought we would get to. We thought it would be a push to get to 400 people. So to kind of go as much over that as we have done, we're pretty, like I said, we're just pretty blown away. And yeah, I think probably maybe a lot of people would say things like that, and you kind of be like, oh yeah, you're just saying that because but it really was. We were that first day where we went through the funding goal and unlocked 1 or 2 stretch goals. We were just like, we couldn't believe it. We were all on our messenger. We got a little messenger group, just be like, Yeah, it was really amazing.
I think that for sure, we talked about this before we started, that Dan is already very skilled at being a media personality. Dan has quite a big following. And for sure, there's a combination of the fact that, okay, this is a collaboration between a parent and a small child, and it strikes a chord with people, getting everyone to do art for it and being like, yeah, if you want your art in the game, you can have it, and really engaging with the community. But Dan's also done a lot of work and a really good job, it feels, at sort of doing the social media marketing, let's say, that has to be done.
Yeah, and he's done really well with that. I think some of it is all this work he's put into building these relationships over the years helped him kind of on that first step, but then the work and the effort that he's put into it, and even just the genuineness of it, like a lot of there isn't a big marketing thing behind it, and it's not this, we're not trying to trick people into buying a game. It's like, it was just generally every decision we make is like, is this going to make the game better? We haven't chucked in a load of stretch goals that don't really mean anything.
Hi Ross, lovely to have you join in. I'll actually be getting to the recap fairly soon, but we're just talking about Cora Quest. And Alex has a question, which is, if you're making enough copies to go into retail. I would actually like to just broaden the question and ask, what are your plans for after the Kickstarter? Are you seeking not only retail partnerships, but partnerships with a proper normal distribution channels?
So we've got lots of options. I think the first thing we wanted to do was just get through the Kickstarter. Obviously, due to the success of it, people have been in touch with us saying that they would love to sign the game and take it to retail themselves, various publishers and things like that. I don't think there's a big desire to become a publisher. You know, Dan has his job and loves his job. So I don't think there's any desire to become a publisher. He just made a game he really liked and wanted to share it with people. I think that's where it's at. So obviously, if we can find a home for it somewhere, we might look to do that. We're not really looking to do retail ourselves. We might do some based on the overprint that you end up with. We might some retailers have been in touch with us, and we might offer it to them. But I think probably what we would do is, if we are looking to partner with a publisher, we would give them those rights to be able to do the retail, because they've got to have something. If we've done all the retail already, there's not a lot left for them to do. So, so I can't say with any certainty whether we definitely will do that or not. Like
it sounds like once you're about to print the things, then that's the point where you'll really be looking for partnerships.
Yeah, I think our commitment as this partnership was to really do this Kickstarter and get the games to those backers. The retail bit would be something to consider after that. And I think it would certainly be part of any agreement that we signed that they couldn't start selling it in retail till we were confident that we had fulfilled everyone that had backed the campaign. So we're just kind of taking emails from people and making a list of them, and we'll get back in touch with them when the campaign's over, is the idea.
I mean, that sounds lovely. And yeah, I agree with Ross that just the whole notion of, it's being family time, emerging from family time, emerging from this cross-generational bond. You know, there's something really heartwarming about that. And having all the crazy ideas. I know that Kathleen Mercury yesterday was talking about, sometimes you get some, there's less of a filter with kids, and you get some crazy ideas that you just wouldn't get with adults, because adults are like, oh no, that's a bit too weird, I'm not going to do that. But kids are, you know what, I'll have a demon jellyfish, and I'll also have a demon jellyfish with wings. So it doesn't, and then we'll have a unicorn and evil pathogens, but you know what I mean? It's
it's been great. It's been a really fun. I think it's been fun to be part of a project that's not like, right, how do we make enough money out of this to pay for it and pay for something else in the future, or pay. It's just like, no, we just want to make this project. It's like we want to share some of that joy with people and the creativity that came from it, and then we'll decide on the businessy stuff afterwards.
It's been super lovely, and I did see that, Ross, for anyone who's not aware, Ravensburger are now trying to open up things. If that's something that interests you, check out their website. If a publisher gets involved, would it enable you to order more copies? Or I suppose they would want to make their own version, says Alex. Like, I know that, for example, Surprise Terror Games partnering with Lookout Spiele, it makes sense to do both print runs at the same time.
Yeah, I think it would depend on the publisher. There might be some differences, like in the Kickstarter version, there's some choices we've made because we think it's cool just from gameplay. Like, we've got vinyl stickers in there so people can stick them onto the dungeon tiles and make them a bit more custom. But from a business sense, that probably doesn't make that much sense because they're quite expensive for just one sheet of vinyl stickers. So in a retail version, you probably wouldn't do that. So I think it would depend on who we were partnering with. And I think probably because we've not done any localizations or translations of the game, I think if we were partnering with a publisher, they probably would want to do that. And so it might make more sense for us. We've got enough copies now, like I said, right from the start. All the goals that have been in place have been costed, and I've got a fancy spreadsheet. So it's not like we lose loads of money by doing a smaller print run. Everything is costed. and it's fine. And we've got enough.
Yeah, I mean, you're
probably going to be
probably
doing
going to print 5,000.
Yeah, I would have thought
copies.
4.5 to 5,000 copies by the. Depends how these last few days go, I guess. Which is it's perfectly fine as a standard print run. Would be closer to 2 to 3 for a lot of games anyway.
So yeah, if anyone hasn't already checked it out, I'm just going to chuck the Kickstarter link in there one more time. We already had all the other links, but it does come to that point in the, well, it's now the end of the morning if you're living in the UK. It comes to that point in the show where I have to say, yeah, it's been a lovely chat. Is there anything that you'd like to bring up or chat about for a minute, literally, before we wrap up?
No, I think we've covered quite a lot. I think the comments have been great. What people are saying about events and stuff is, I'm just looking forward to that time. I definitely don't want to be going to events when it's not safe. But I think, I'm just looking forward to that time when we can.
100%. And so, that's basically the end of the show. We've talked about so much today. We've talked about Mark Cooke, being a curious soul. We've talked about Mark Cooke wanting, having a family, and from getting from these cheesy moments, which apparently you do enjoy, even though you weren't remembering their name. We talked about Belgian beer. We talked about having the right tools for the job. We talked about Timmy, who's apparently the son or smaller brother of Shaun the Sheep.
Yeah.
We talked about I was actually going to ask you. Okay, sorry, we briefly mentioned faith and religion and beer. Okay, and I want to ask you, what for you is the difference between faith and religion?
I think for me, religion is often set in a bunch of rules or guidelines that you have to follow, and it's certain things like, I don't know, I guess for a lot of Christianities, it's observing certain rituals or certain times of year, and they become quite holy or whatever. Even though a lot of them are based on sort of old pagan traditions, they somehow have become holy in the Christian religion. But there's other things that, every kind of religion will have certain things and rules that you have to abide by to win your salvation or to win your place into heaven. I think for me, a faith is more deep-rooted in your belief and kind of belief in a certain way of life or a certain being in some way. And it's more, I think certainly for me, it's realizing that I could never stick to all of those various rules that you see certainly in the Old Testament of the Bible. And it's recognizing that you can't do that, but thankfully you don't need to, because there's a belief there. So.
I mean, I feel like there's definitely an interesting conversation to be had, and I'd love to have at some point possibly like a round table with maybe 3 people who, not just Christianity, because I know that Christianity is a big deal in the Western world, obviously, but people who of different faith spots. I get the sense that a lot of religious folk might call you very liberal.
Probably. I would have thought so.
But, and which church exactly do you go to?
At the minute, we're going to a Baptist church, which is just around the corner here. I would probably say it's not our ideal church, but it's the closest we could get that was within walking distance, because community was very important to us. The church we were going to before was about a 20-minute, half-hour drive away. And just with our kids, it was sometimes very difficult to attend that church. Even though they had midweek groups and stuff, it was still quite a big commitment for us to be able to actually be part of that. And we just felt like we were losing some of that community. So we decided to come to a church that is not our ideal church, but we can be more involved in the community and doing good things in our local area.
And Roberts and Alex, I assume that you're just saying bye because we're wrapping up rather than you're heading off this instant. But if you're heading off this instant, it's been lovely having you in the chat. But and thank you very much if you're still there. But we did talk about so much. We talked about ducks. We talked about meeples. We talked about Jenny and Monopoly, and joining in games and upbringing in a military village. We talked about being a farmhand and tiny villages and being part of a band and Airecon and how it's all about open gaming, how it's all about the social aspect. We talked about why we like Airecon and the fact that because it's not part of your livelihood, it is going to continue. And we talked about PSC, and we mentioned very briefly Zapato. Sorry, where's my link gone? Yeah, Zapato, which a cool website, by the way. And we talked a wee bit about Cora Quest, and then I started wrapping it up, and then I interrupted it to talk about religion, and then I carried on wrapping up, and I said bye to Alex, and apparently it is just a general have a good day. And it's been lovely having you. If people want to check me out, then I am, of course, stuffbybez.com, stuffbybez.bigcartel.com, twitter.com/stuffbybez, instagram.com/stuffbybez, twitch.tv/stuffbybez. I stream every day at 10 a.m. UK time currently, although I'm going to start having a break after episode 300. YouTube.com/stuffbybez for the old shows, and stuffbybez.com/discord if you want to get involved in ongoing discussions, suggest someone, just get in touch. There's plenty of ways to get in touch. I'm also on Facebook, facebook.com/thingsbybez, all that good stuff. If you want to check out Mark, yeah, I've done it a few times. Sorry, can you repeat your socials, please? Sure. Ross, I know that you're joking, but sure. It is. The trick is that I actually look at what's going on, so it kind of gives me a little bit of help. So it's stuffbybez.com, which is my website, which needs a lot of work to it. Stuffbybez.bigcartel.com, where you can buy my stuff. And you can currently buy a print and play version of the LDEC or Kitty Cataclysm. Twitter.com/stuffbybez, where I just tweet about random stuff. Instagram.com/stuffbybez, which I'm going to start making more personal, but it's about games and pretty things. Switch.tv/stuffbybez for my regular streaming, where you are. YouTube.com/stuffbybez for old episodes, and stuffbybez.com/discord for general stuff. And where can you be found?
Airecon.co.uk. That's air like the river, so it's got an E after it. pscgames.co.uk, coraquest.com, and zapatobrewing.com.
Yes, and those are all things that Mark is responsible for in some manner.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're entirely responsible for any of these, but
I
some
have a
manner.
hand in.
Yeah. You've got you've got 4 limbs. You've got a hand in one, a hand in another, a foot in one, and a foot in another. Exactly. So you're kind of playing Jenga with these companies. I mean, not Twister, sorry. Twister. That's what I meant. And of course, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to everyone. Massive thank you to Mark, who's lovely. And, you know, I am going to thank you, obviously, for coming on, for joining me, for being such a lovely guest, and also for being on the podcast ages ago that I was doing, but also for all you are doing for the community, like for setting up Airecon. It's been a brilliant thing. And thank you, Mark, for that. And if everyone could put in some like love hearts or something for Mark in the chats, that would be amazing. And just because I think that, yeah, I mean, sure, it might be that one day it is something that's making an income, but to do this because, you know, you're putting all the money straight back in and you're just trying to allow people to have a place to meet each other and have a good time. Yeah. Thank you, Mark. And also thank you everyone in chat. And thank you for the thanks, Mark. But yeah, thank you to everyone in chat. Thank you for popping in, Tom, and Yoda and Ross and Roberts and Alex and Xates and everyone. And yeah, I'm sorry if I'm not Elaine, and yeah, so many people, so many amazing people. And yeah, Nicholas and Emma and Anne popped in for a wee bit. But Mike, Matthew Dunstan, everyone, even to those people who didn't actually say anything, who were just kind of lurking, it's been lovely. It's been lovely having you all here. And so thank you everyone for making it an enjoyable thing to do. And the final thing that I ask is, over to you. What are you up to? You can share anything you want to. So it is Tuesday. You are working on a Tuesday. What are you working on today, Mark? And you could talk about serious stuff that you hope to get done, stuff that you're looking forward to getting done. Maybe when Lottie comes back home. Maybe it's something serious. Maybe it's something frivolous. Maybe it's something boring, or maybe it's something exciting. Tell us.
So actually today I'm not working. I usually would be working, but today I'm not. We haven't got childcare today, so we've split the day into two. So after this, I'm going to have some lunch, and then I'm going to have an afternoon with the kids. So I don't know what we're going to do yet. We'll do that. We might go to the play park because it looks like it's getting sunny now.
Nice.
So
sounds awesome.
Yeah. So that's what I'm up to today.
That sounds lovely. I am going to be. Yeah. Let's see what. If anybody else is up to anything, then let us know. And I'm thankful that everyone's been getting value out of these streams. It's really nice to hear. And oh yeah, shout out to that Games Cupboard. Actually, I'm just going to shout out Games Cupboard because is it Game Cupboard or Games Cupboard? I can't remember. But yeah, I saw them playing Welcome to last night. I'm going to be doing a bit of work. I'm going to be making sure that I get a bit of exercise in. I'm going to be doing more drawing of letter shapes. I did not do any yesterday. It's my resolution to do some every second day. This is like, I don't know how many times I've drawn these letters. This is not the final thing. This is probably like 2 or 3 steps. If I get the final alphabet on this page, which hopefully I'll finish doing today, because I was doing a lot of experimentation with the J's and the L's, and it's like, okay, I'm happy with my J, I'm happy with my L, finally, and now I feel like I've got a solid idea, so I'm going to make this. I'm going to hopefully do a Kickstarter update very soon. Once I've got like the final alphabet, I'll see what people are thinking of that, and that is a thing that I will do. I might, reach out to a couple of people. I'll be doing wee bits of writing. I'm not going to talk or click through everything that I'm doing, but I am, of course, streaming later tonight because it is Tuesday. I've streamed basically every week except for I think I missed 2 or 3 for the Christmas New Year period. And tonight we're playing a very social game. If you know 2 truths and a lie, it's like that, but even simpler. You just give one fact, and it could be truth or not, and everyone else has to guess. It's called A Fact and a Half. The name was actually chosen by Ross ages ago. I should mention that. And so it's a parlor game. You get a point for guessing correctly. You get a point for fooling half the people. That's it.
Nice.
And so that's going to be some people having fun together. If you want to join in on video, 8 p.m. UK time, let me know. Check out that tomorrow I'll be playing Flea, then getting to know Dina, Friendly Friday Forum, meeting Anna Vassenberg from Dice Tower Budget Spellen. Sunday I'll be reviewing Board Game Arena stuff, and I will be meeting one of the Board Game Arena people next Monday, which I'm super excited about. So I will, after their Asmodee takeover, I'll be talking with them about what that means for the future and if there's going to be any changes. Obviously, it means that Asmodee's made it. I mean, we'll get to that later. That's not what we're talking about now. But if that sounds interesting, share, spread the word. And Robert is doing an actual job at the moment, then doing work on their own game this evening. Another meeting with potential publisher on Saturday. So trying to test ideas. That sounds awesome. And yep, I will be jiggling and wiggling just after this show. Actually, let's do a little thing. There we go. Oh, my bits of paper and my notes were about to fall off my lap. But yeah, it is the time when you've said everything, Mark. I think you're all talked out.
Yeah, I'm all good. It was good fun. Thank you.
And I am. There's 2 more things that I've got to do. Firstly, I check on Twitch to see who's streaming, and I see that's Idle Michael, and let's go into Idle Michael's channel, where Idle Michael is talking about pitching today. Idle Michael of We Are Hub Games, formerly Little Metal Dog Show, somewhat recently Trouble's Life of Billy Kerr. So that's who we're checking out, and that's who I recommend. And share the love, copy paste some of this message, and it will look cool. Other than that, there is only one thing left to say. And that one thing left to say is bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Come on, you can sing along. Go. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Ah. Thank you. Bye-bye.